Hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. Today we have a lot of really cool science fiction and fantasy books we need to discuss. There's going to be reading updates, writing updates, reviews. This is going to be great. Let's get ready. But before we start, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. Also, if you want to support the channel, you can check out my own epic fantasy novel, The Crimson Fire. The link is in the description. Let's start, of course, with some epic fantasy. And this is a book that I knew absolutely nothing about it. I had seen the cover floating around and I told myself, that is cool. It sounds really cool. And I think I am kind of justified because it was recently released, I think March or April, and it is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This is an epic fantasy book that is quickly gathering a really dedicated fan base. It sounds really cool and I can understand why, because of the description. You know, when the description is so good, you know that you're in for a treat, because there's something strange going on, but in a really compelling way. It starts in a very familiar way and then it becomes strange. Let me explain what I mean about it. So the general idea is that we have this empire and the emperor. It looks like it will be there will be a succession, but the next emperor will be chosen between 7 champions. They will go through trials and this epic war between them to decide who will be the real winner. From the way the description is organized, it looks like this is kind of a ceremonial thing. I don't think it is actually a war between 7 different kingdoms. We really don't have much of details about that. So I think there's an element of gladiator style infight to decide who will be the next emperor until one of the participants is brutally unalived, and there's someone who's going to investigate. When I read the description, I thought it was a third party or someone from the actual kingdom that was tasked to try and understand what was going on. But when you read the description, you kind of understand that maybe it's one of those 6 remaining competitors to the kingdom who's actually tasked to understand who's the killer, okay? And that's interesting, of course, because we have this element of mystery, of murder mystery, inside the classic frame of epic fantasy. And if you have been following my channel just for a bit, you know that how much I like that kind of dynamics, because it makes the story so much deeper. And if the questions are compelling, the plot will be obviously compelling. And if the characters, they work in favor of that kind of discovery, search and discovery, it will make the story absolutely gripping. But then the weird thing starts just at the end of the description, because it says, and this person who's trying to understand who the killer is, she's called Anima, she believes she's alone, but we are here to help. Who's we? All she has to do is let us in. If she succeeds, she will win the throne, and if she fails, that awaits her. But we won't let that happen. Again, who's we? We are the Raven, and we are magnificent. Head blown, absolutely hyped. I'm really curious to see this, but I'm afraid because, you know, I'm based in Italy, and I have to buy books from Amazon mostly when I want to read them, and I usually can choose the US edition or the UK edition if the book is popular enough to grant immediately a parallel release in the US market and UK edition. Really, most of the titles that I'm interested in I can buy, but this one was listed in the Italian Amazon that mostly relies on the UK Amazon to buy that kind of books in English. It was listed, but it was incredibly pricey, like $60 or something, or €60 or something just for a paperback. I was afraid, I was curious, but I was afraid I was not going to be able to afford it until today. I checked on Amazon and it's completely vanished. It's not available in any format. Why? What's going on? It could be a glitch, or it could be that they deleted the old listing and they're trying to release the book in a new edition, maybe the UK edition. I suppose it was that pricey because I was trying to buy an edition that really actually came from the US, and then you have this insanely high shipping price, of course, probably. So yeah, I want to read this, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to read this. Not even an ebook. It's not available in any format. It's difficult. Let's see. I'm really interested. If you have read this, let me know what you think about it. A Chorus of War by Scott Palmer. This is the second book in the last ballad series. The first one was A Memory of Song that I reviewed a couple of months ago. Last year, probably. Yeah, I reviewed it, yes, here on YouTube. And it was an incredible book. A really, really good book, even for someone who has a dark time, a really difficult time. Excuse the play of words here, the choice of words, with dark fantasy, because this is really, really, really dark fantasy. This is really gloomy, really desperate, with characters struggling with post-trauma, with a really, really difficult setting. The world building was extremely dark because we are in the aftermath of some really incredible earth-shattering events. And most of the main cast is trying to understand what they want to do with their life, and if they have to embrace a particular fight, if they want to deal the consequences of finding the answer to what happened, what transpired in the recent past and in the not so recent past. It was a really interesting story for what it was, and even I, who have such a hard time with this kind of specific kind of dark fantasy, I had to admit it was really well delivered, really well researched, constructed, the pacing and the language and the overall plot and the character progression. But I had to be in the right mindset to read such a desperate story, because you'll see, if you have read the first book, you saw that the characters, they were mostly unlikable. There were just a few flickers of light and heroism and hope at the end of the story, and they all have had really interesting character dynamics and arcs in the development of their own story. But it was a heavy story, so I'm really curious to see how the second book compares to the first one. I have seen beautiful pictures around, because the first edition of the first book was a really well executed book on the paper side of things, you know, as a physical book to hold in your hand. It looked good and it was well done. But if you have seen picture of the second books, of the illustrations that he had inside, of the beautiful cover, you see that Scott is elevating the thing a little bit more, and he's trying to make it even more worthy of a space in your shelves. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how it goes, and I think I need to be prepared. So I'm taking my sweet time to try and understand where to put this book in my TBR, because as I told you, these are heavy themes, these are heavy stories. And if you love dark fantasy, if you love epic dark fantasy with / grimdark and that kind of stuff, but I don't think this is actually grimdark. I think it's more of a dark fantasy. Because of the structure, it mostly resembles epic fantasy, not the dynamics of grimdark, okay? But if you love that kind of story, you'll find plenty here to enjoy, because this is such a well executed and so well planned story, and so well delivered. So if you have read the first book, let me know what you think about it. If you're curious to see what's going on with the sequel and the rest of the story, let me know too, and I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish reading it. A Song of Legend Lost. I had my eyes on this book for quite a while, but then I saw a review, and I'll try to link it in the description down below, from a booktube channel that I've been following for quite a while, that really made me curious to see what is the deal with this one. Because, as you see from the cover, we have characters that have the ability to summon ancient creatures that they will use during the fight. Okay, there's this kind of Pokemon element when they can summon those, but the problem is that, of course, that they use it at war. There are warring kingdoms all around the setting. That looks like it has this African aesthetic, deep African aesthetic, with a reference to African folklore and mythology. But looks like they end up summoning other evil creatures. So they're supposed to have a tactical advantage using those summoning, and then they made the war worse. So that's an interesting dynamic. But if you see the review that I'm linking down below, you'll see that the description that we have here is just a part, because this is a multi-POV story with around 7 or 8 point of views, and that they all seem to have a fair space in the book, a fair page count. So there's much more going on from what you see in the story, because what you have in the description is about a girl that accidentally summons one of those creatures, and then she has to deal with the consequence of that, and with the fact that not only benevolent creatures have been summoned, but also evil ones. So that's the gist of what you have in the description, but it looks like that's just a fraction of what you have character-wise and world-building-wise. This is supposed to be a much more ambitious story than it sounds from that kind of description. The book sounds amazing. The review is really good too. So if you're curious about the books, and if you have read it, let me know, and I'll let you know what I think about it, of course, as soon as I put my pause on it. I also wanted to shout out a whole series. I don't think it's complete, by Bethany Garcia, and it is The Heart of Quinaria. Quinaria. Let's start butchering names and surnames and series' name. Okay, so this is a series with 2 books out and 2 short stories or novellas. The first one is The Thieves of Shadows. The second one is Of Love and Loss. And the 2 novellas are From the Ashes and From the Depths. So the description of the series is really effective, but also heart-wrenching, and actually made me a little bit afraid to read the series, because it looks like this one too will have heavy topics and a dark world, and you need to be in the right mindset to face what you're going to read in the story. So it's a land of fallen gods that still whispers, and relics of a lost age that begin to stir. There's an unlikely outcast that is forced into a raging war, and this world could shatter what's left of the world. So, as you may know, if you've been following for quite a while, I like when fantasy has a little bit of a post-apocalyptic element. So when the status quo of the story has to deal with the ancient and lost civilization. Because, you know, when we in the modern world deal with the ancient civilization, it is through the lenses of a modern world that has discovered so much of the physical world, and it still has to discover so much about the world. But there's a clear separation between our lifestyles and the mysteries of ancient civilizations. We understand quite a bit of what maybe their life was, but we don't understand so much more. So there's this separation, this dark void in between that time brought between us and that kind of civilization. But when we have fantasy world that in their modern predicament, in the days they're living, is already ancient, and usually those kind of empires that we have, if you take Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, you have generations upon generations for thousands of years there, but then they have to deal with something that it's even older from other continents. And when they have the suspicion that that civilization was even more advanced than they were, that's incredibly compelling for me, because it adds layers on layers of mystery and of separation on a really different lens. It happens with the Wheel of Time too, when you understand that their world that has this medieval aesthetic, it is actually set in the future, and they have to deal what they have lost was they were our modern time and an advanced future. So when they have to deal with relics, they are actually dealing with modern and advanced technology that they don't understand anymore, that they use not exactly in the proper way, and that they cannot fix. So they lose a relic that's lost because they can't repair if they damage it. So here it says that not only we have that kind of ancient civilization, but we also have remnants of the gods that ruled on that world. And that's incredible for me. So I'm really curious to see how it actually that works on the world building and how that kind of setting influences the dynamics of the story and the characters and all the rest. And at the end of the description it says, expect tragic ancient ruins and power that never really disappeared, only went dormant long enough to be forgotten. And it says, for fans of Skyrim, Horizon Zero Dawn. Haha, I was right. This is probably an epic fantasy world that has future technology in the past. And then the Broken Earth. I think this is the from Jamison. Is it the 5th season? Probably yes. When it has the mythic soul of Tolkien, but has a darker lens with more women, weirder lore, and no warranties. So yeah. So I'm attracted to the stories. I'm also kind of scared. So let's see how it goes. The books are pretty chunky, especially the second one. So yeah, I'll let you know what you think and what I think about it as soon as I finish it. If you have read any of this, let me know what you think about it. There is a trilogy that I'm really interested in, and that has amazing covers, beautiful titles, and a description that makes it sounds exactly tailor made for me. And I didn't have the chance to read even one book in the series. That it is recently complete. I think that the 3rd book was released in April, and it is the Soulfire Saga by Matthew Wurts. And I have the previous trilogy by Matthew Wurts here, and the first one was Legacy of Ash, the first one, and I still haven't read that one too. Ow! That's bad. That's pretty bad, because I know they're so good. They're pretty well beloved. So this one is completed too, and the first one is The Darkness Before Them, the second one is The Fire Within Them, and the third one, the last one, is The Lie That Bends Them. And I liked it so much because it sounds so familiar. It has a concept that sounds so familiar. You'll see why when I explained it. But it also, I'm pretty sure that the author it's able to inject his own take on it and his peculiar spin, because as I told you, he's been publishing book for quite a while. So he's an experienced dude, okay? So this is about an immortal king. And then we have a thief, a street thief. And we have a world building where the city is surrounded by a mist. So just by giving you those elements, you'll see that this reminds me, and should remind you of course too, of Mistborn. And if you have been following me, you know that I have this hot take of mine, is that Mistborn is actually better than the Stormlight Archives. Yeah, I know, hate me for that, but you do you, okay? I respect you for being in love with the Stormlight Archives. I am not. I'm enjoying it. I'm taking my sweet time to try and finish it. I should read Oathbringer in the winter, I think, after the summer, because I have other commitments. but it's not exactly my priority because I enjoy that story. I enjoy the grandeur and the scope and the world building. I'm not in love with any of the characters. I sympathize with them, which actually was completely opposite with the Mistborn. I loved everything about it: the world building, the pacing, the action scenes, the characters, and the mysteries, and everything else. And when I tell you that we have familiar elements in this series, the Soulfire Saga, is because I've been searching for something to fill that Mistborn-shaped hole that I have in my chest. And I think this may be able to do it. And yeah, just by looking at the covers and the vibes, because we have these street thieves, this girl that is trying to score a job to repay and to get revenge for what happened to her family and to maybe pay debts too, I think. And the fact that she will be probably involved in the rebellion against this immortal king. Come on, that's really cool. And I want to see how the politics of this happens, how they work, how the world building actually work, how her incredible abilities actually influence the pacing and the action scenes and all the rest, and the character development. I'm so curious and so pumped about this. I will slap myself for having, because I hadn't been able to read it. I actually wasn't good on planning enough of reading the books, because I've been a mood reader for most of my life. But since I've started to take reviews more seriously, trying to be a proper, almost a professional at reviewing, I have to organize my TBR and trying to stick with it, because I have so many books to review, especially with authors that have sent me hard copies of the books, and they deserve my time and my attention. And then I have also digital arcs with ebooks that I should read, and then I should carve a little bit of time for books that I actually want to read, because I just genuinely want to read them on a whim, and I cannot do it on a whim. I have to plan and to actually place those books in a specific point of my TBR. So it is hard. I'm not complaining, because most of the books that I'm reading that have been sent from authors, that most of them are really good and compelling. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I cannot be a mood reader anymore. Sometime, even if I'm eager to read a series, I have to wait. But if you have read this and if you know anything about this, just let me know, and I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish reading it. Let's do reading updates really quick. Still reading and enjoying really very much An Exile of War and Gold by Joshua Walker. I'm not saying too much today, because I always say kind of the same thing. I'm enjoying the story. It is very well done, interesting world building, nice characters, really epic feelings, pretty unique too. I'm also reading Warhost of Vastmark by Janny Wurts, and I am pleasantly satisfied with myself, because I was right. This is definitely the third and fourth act of a much bigger story, or maybe an extended third act. It doesn't matter. It's the second part of a bigger book, okay? It is being sold as 2 books in the UK edition, which is the Ships of Merior and Warhost of Vastmark. But if you have the beautiful hardcover of the American edition, it will be just a single book with the whole story. And I'm enjoying it much more than the first book, because the pacing is quicker, and you have the feeling that the story is starting to wrap up, and that the various roads and characters are going to converge in a really satisfying way. And there is a specific space for a secondary character that I almost forgot, because it has just a tiny part a relatively small part on the first part of the story in the second book, okay? But here it has so much more space, and Janny Wurts has this uncanny ability to make you care about characters that you barely know anything about them, and to use them in a really specific way inside the plotting and the pacing of the story, and to give them a specific character development, even in a short amount of time, because they're by no means protagonists of the stories, but they they go on center stage for a small amount of time of pages, and they have an incredible story. So that's genius. That's incredible. How does she do that? We don't know. Probably sorcery. And then, as I told you, I'm trying to put a little bit of mood reading in my TBR to enjoy things that were not supposed to be read in this time because I have other commitments. But I don't want to shackle myself and to begin to see reading as a commitment, just as a job, because no one is paying me to do this, but just to make it heavy on my shoulders, okay? So I'm reading something else, which is actually Exodus, the Archimedes Engine by Peter F. Hamilton. This is actually my first book that I have ever read by this author, which is so much beloved as a pillar of the modern science fiction worldwide. He's a UK author, and the Archimedes Engine, Exodus, is part of a shared universe. And the second book in this duology should be released at the end of the year, and I know that Adrian Tchaikovsky is working on another novel in this universe. The main entry of this universe is a video game called Exodus, of course, and that has this interesting dynamics of time dilation, because there's this particular breed of human beings that have this rule in the story to travel around the world, keeping the humanity safe. But the fact that they travel so close to the speed of life and using portals, interstellar portals, means that they spend that the time is different with the people that lives on planet if you compare it with the way they experience it. So if they travel on a ship for 6 months, years and years pass on the planet. If they come back, they find people and civilization change in the meantime, and that makes the interpersonal conflict so much deeper, because if they have loved ones on a planet, those loved ones, they'll spend years without them. Maybe they die too. And civilization wise, if they leave a planet of a city in one position, they'll find the civilization, that city, probably much changed when they come back. This is far future space opera, really far future, 40,000 years in the future. You'll see humanity changing so much. I have read just 30 pages of it, and in those 30 pages there's so much cool concept on a character development side, world building, and cool technology that it's mind-blowing how it is possible to cram so much and make it incredibly digestible and easy read with a powerful aesthetic. That's incredible. And this is the first book that I read by these authors, and many of his passionate readers, they say that if I go back and read his back catalog, we have even more ambitious stories that are completely 100% his, because he had, if you see the interviews about this book, you'll see that he had a pretty major impact on the story and the world building of the series. So he's not just a gun for hire here. He's working with the producers of the story of the world building in an organic way. So what he does infers on the video games, and what the video games does infers on the story of the books, which is anyway designed to be independent. So if you're a reader and you don't care about video games, you'll have a satisfying story there too. But if you're interested in the overall world building, you're probably going by the video games the way I will do. I don't have a console anymore. I don't have a good enough PC to run video games today. But I could, and I will probably buy a console just because of this video game. Because the people behind Mass Effect designed this video game. They created this world. And the lead writer for the first 2 video games on the Mass Effect series, and also author of many very good Star Wars novels, whose Drew Karpyshyn is a lead writer on this series too. So it's a match made in heaven. I'm pretty sure it will be amazing. So yeah, this is all I have for you, just for reading updates, let's go to reviews. I just finished to read The Black Mantle by Andrew Watson, and I knew this was going to be a really enjoyable story because he proved he can write good stories with the first book, Harbinger of Justice, and the short story Silence is Silver. And this one is actually a better story. It's bigger, it's more ambitious, we have more of the world building, we have more cities, we have more politics and dynamics, and we have more about the two characters I care the most, Rai and Kit. We have a whole, I won't say the 50%, maybe, of Rai's story inside the book. We have many flashbacks from where he was just a toddler in a very difficult situation, going through the life. There is kind of a slice of life dynamics in the book when we see his life, but then he jumps to various important events through his life that shapes the kind of person that he has and the person that he is at the beginning of the first book, because who we have here is actually an evolution of the character that we have on the first book. And then we have the modern days, the current timeline with Naya and Kit. As I told you, this characters at the end of the first book was in a peculiar position, and there is a mystery around him, trying to understand exactly what happened to him and how he has to deal with his actual predicament that he's living in his life. Naya keeps being a compelling character, but keeps being the less interesting part of the book for me. I'm sorry, even if she is at the end of this one in a very specific, very good position, as well as Kai, Kit, and as well as Rai. So the book here is positioned in a peculiar way, because if you have read the first book, it ends the run of that story. It has a satisfying ending, but it has a couple of really loose strands and a couple of really big questions, okay? But you could read that first book as a satisfying story, almost as a standalone. It doesn't happen with this one, and I'm telling you, it ends on a cliffhanger. You have to be prepared, because it is a mind-blowing cliffhanger. It's also really painful, because we have here too a resolution of a couple of micro events that we have in this story, but it ends in a moment when you're on the edge of your seat, and you can hear them, you can feel them. You can feel Andrew Watson cackling there. Suffer, you stupid poor reader. You should have trusted me. You never should have trusted me. Haha, die. Pew. That's what happens, exactly. So the story is much more ambitious. It deals with the past of Rai. It deals with Naya and Kit trying to find answers, and it deals with a big conflict, because there is something in the world building of the story. There is this parallel universe / dark universe. There are these tiers in the fabric of reality that gives you access on a darker world, and that's actually when the superpowers that Rai has, they come from with these entities that he has inside his head that is able to materialize and gives him these incredible abilities. So they try to investigate there, but in the first book it was a much more personal story of the characters try to understand what that dark universe was. Here we have kingdoms and politics involved, trying to understand and maybe weaponize that parallel world. And then we have the personal stories of this character dealing on a personal level with that, but also dealing with the politics of this huge war brewing there. So the story is bigger, it's more ambitious, the action is faster and quicker and much more well described. Not that it didn't work in those books, in the first book and in the novella, but this one is on another level, it's even better. But I will say there's only one thing that makes it, that could be considered as a weakness of the story, and it is also one of the best parts. So your mileage may vary depending on the kind of reader you are, and that's the flashbacks. because they're so consistent and they take so much space that they're interesting, but especially in the third act, near the end of the story, when you're engrossed in the development of the actual timeline and you still have to come back to those flashbacks, it can be a little annoying. Even if if you step back and you analyze those flashbacks and you see what's going on, you understand that what happens there infers and affects what you have in the current story. So they're not interrupting the flow of the story just for the sake of giving us a past of a character that we love so much. For me, it would have been a if it was enough of a justification, to be honest. But on a story-wise, it would have made the story weaker. Here, you see that the flashbacks, they work in the context of the story, and they give you actually something that explain a few things, and you have parallels on what happens in those stories with what's going on in the actual timeline. But then again, they're so frequent, and they take so much space that inevitably the avalanche of things happening at the end of the book, they suffer a little bit of what happened because of those flashbacks. So for me, those events could have been stripped down a little bit or reorganized to happen in the first and the second act, and then leaving the third act all for the resolve or the resolution of the story. Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't work in the way it works in the story, and I'm not saying that the story as it is worse than it could have been if you compare to the way I would have done it, because I think it was planned to achieve exactly what it achieved in the way the story is. But I will say that where I was expecting the story to fire on all cylinders and to rush to the ending, I still had to deal with those flashbacks, and it was a little bit annoying. But otherwise, the story is really good. It's longer, it's bigger. It's not a chunker per se, okay? It's a longer book, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. And it is better than the first book and in the novella. And you see how Andrew Watson is becoming a better and better writer, that is actually learning from the feedback of the community, because I can see where he actually tried to fix a few things and to improve them. Not fix because there was nothing actually broken in the first book, but to improve a few things to make the second book better. And to do that and being able to maintain a consistent voice without being a people pleaser and a crowd pleaser is an achievement in and of itself. So go check it out. 5 stars. I loved it. It is painful. I hated it and I loved it. And if you have read this book, let me know what you think about it. Okay, let's discuss this book. Okay, I don't have writing updates for this specific episode for today, because I shift my focus for a couple of weeks to other 2 things that I'm doing. The first one is the Italian translation of The Way of Edan by Philip Chase, which is a novel that I loved. And he is a booktuber and a human being that I adore, absolutely. And I have this privilege to bring his book to my country. And it's a slow process. It's a really deep process. It's a huge honor. And I'm trying to give it justice, to give it the right amount of time and care and love to translate this book in the best way possible. And of course, if I'm giving my 100% with that, I'm not giving it to my writing, but I'm comfortable because, as I told you, the second book is already written and the third one is in a good position too, so I can take a little bit of time to do something else. Okay, and it is actually good things, because when you step back from your books and then you come back after a while, you have fresh eyes and you can see things that maybe you weren't able to see when you're deep in the trenches of the writing and the editings and all the rest. So taking time away from a story, it's a good thing, especially if you have dedicated to a story a very, very long time. You don't want to get to a point when you hate your story because you have been dealing with it for too much time, okay? And the other things that I'm doing, I'm also really proud and really happy to do it, is the typography and the internal layout of Mercy, Tears of the Fallen by Dillon, which is an incredible dark epic fantasy book. I did the internal design and the typography for the arcs, the physical arcs and the ebooks that you've been consuming during these weeks, and I've seen reviews for these books and all around on Goodreads too, and it sounds like it's really good. And I'm trying to not to spoil myself while working on that, okay? But the final design, internal design and typography for the retail edition that you will see in, I was going to say something and I think I cannot say much more, but the internal design will be different from what you had in the ARC copies, okay? So I'm working on that, and it's taking a fair bit of time because we want to give it justice. This is going to be big. I can feel it. This is going to be big. Yeah, but during the second half of the month, I will go back to work to my own epic fantasy series, The Memories of Kenjir, with the second book, and we'll have a title reveal in 10 days, maybe, or less. Yeah, I will announce it, all screaming from the rooftops when the time comes. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for being here, for staying with me until the end of this very long video. Thank you for being a supporter, for your enthusiasm, and for the way you always show support to my channel. Remember that if you're interested in fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this video, and also you can support the channel in another way. You can check out my own epic fantasy novel, The Crimson Fire. And if you want to see more videos like this right here, right now, you have more videos like this right here, right now. Thank you again. Thank you for being awesome. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.